On a cold Friday night on March 16, 2001, in Little Rock, Arkansas, Annie Lowe had had a long day at work and decided to blow off some steam with her friends by going to a local bar. Once she was there, she had a few drinks and was having a good time with her friends, but little did she know that when her friends watched her walk out of the door with a man following her, that would be the last time they would see her.
We're having a good night. I had a few drinks and danced a lot. Annie even talked to a guy that was hitting on her all night. But I didn't know that the next morning she wouldn't call back. I had a bad vibe about the guy that was hanging around her the whole night, and I tried to tell her, but she didn't want to hear it. She had been dancing the majority of the night. She told me she was getting tired, so she sat down. A few minutes later, she said she wanted to go home, and I offered to take her home, but she said she could handle it. And to be honest, I was in no position to be driving either, so I let her go. I noticed that shortly after she left, that guy left too, but I just chalked it up to a coincidence.
What Miss Davis did not know was that it was not a coincidence and that Annie Lowe never made it home. Annie was supposed to leave the bar and go home and go to sleep, but when Jessica stopped by her house 2 hours after Annie had left the bar, she was not there, so Jessica left and waited until the morning to call to check on her, but it was too late. She never got an answer from Annie.
We got multiple missing persons calls for Miss Lowe, so we assembled a team to look for her, and we asked her friends if there was anybody new that she had met, and one said that she was talking to a guy to who Miss Lowe had said was named Joe Smith. So we called him for questioning and asked him if he knew anything about Miss Lowe, but he said that he had no clue who she was. He did confirm that he was at the bar that night. We then went to the bar that Miss Lowe had been at and asked for access to the security footage, and when we watched them, we found something eye-opening.
When they watched the security tapes from the bar, the police saw a stumbling Annie Lowe being approached by a strange man. They seemed to be talking for a few minutes until the man led her to his car and they drove off. This man drew a strange resemblance to Joe Smith.
When the cops told us that they had found those tapes, I just knew that it was the same guy who had been hanging around Annie all night. My heart dropped into my stomach, and I just knew she was gone for good.
Annie Lowe's body was found 15 miles down the road from her house near a creek around 2 p.m. the next day. It was hidden under leaves and covered with the dirt. Her body was found by some teenagers who were wandering the area. Jessica Davis was called in to identify the body. Miss Lowe had the same clothes on that she had on the night before. Autopsy reports showed high levels of alcohol and retinol in her system from the night before. Lividity settled in her body in a different position than she was found in. It settled as if she was laying flat on her back when she died, and she was positioned in a fetal position on her side, indicating her body was moved.
We brought Smith in for questioning. When he first talked to us, he stated that he had flirted with Miss Lowe and that she had left with him, and he took her home because of how intoxicated she was and left her there to rest. When we talked to him later on, though, he changed his story completely. He told us that she had went with him willingly to his own house and then left a few hours later. We found blue fibers on Miss Lowe's body. We then had to test those fibers, and we found that the fiber was specific to a manufacturer in the Midwest that had stopped producing that fibers for 10 years. We narrowed down the houses in the Little Rock area that had at one time bought those fibers, and Joe Smith's house was one of them. This established probable cause that allowed us to obtain a search warrant for his house. We called Joe Smith in for questioning, and this time he changed his story. He said he had driven Miss Lowe back to her house that night because he had a few conversations with her that night and wanted to make sure that she got home safely.
Upon entering Joe Smith's house, members of the Little Rock PD were able to identify a couch with similar color to the fibers found on Miss Lowe's body, so they took a sample for testing and comparison. Upon further investigation, a small blood stain was found on the floor beside the couch. The sample was taken to a lab for analysis along with a long strand of hair found on a pillow on Smith's couch. The sample of hair was tested for DNA because the root was attached, and it revealed that the hair originated from Annie Lowe's head.
We finally had it. That piece of the puzzle that we needed to get that bastard behind bars for what he did to my sweet Annie.
When evidence came back from the lab, we were able to arrest Joe Smith on the charge of murder. After his arrest, he refused to cooperate with us anymore without an attorney present. But when his court date arose, he confessed to the charge and was sentenced to 50 years in the state penitentiary for second-degree murder.
Joe Smith is still serving out his sentence for his acts of violence toward Annie Lowe. As family and friends mourn the loss of this beautiful young soul, they find comfort in knowing that justice has been served for Annie and that her memory will live on.
I did it. I couldn't resist. I saw her all night. I was staring at her. She was just so beautiful, and I'm just so lonely. And I had to do it. I just wanted to talk to her. And when she didn't want to talk to me, I felt so rejected. Nothing else to do. I did it. What are you going to do about it? I did it. She's dead.